Well, if it's a Thursday morning, it is time for another About Mansfield Consumer Advice Series episode. I'm your host, Steve Casillo. Appreciate you being here today. And chances are pretty good, if you live in Mansfield and if you own your home, I'm going to say there's a 99.9% chance that you own a tree. And that's why we bring on our friendly neighborhood arborist every week, right here for these 10-minute nuggets of information. Cameron Scott from Bartlett Tree Experts, welcome back to About Mansfield.
All right, glad to be here. Glad you keep having me back.
And you're always in your car because you're always out working and checking on people's trees. Where are you today?
That's right. This morning I am up in North Arlington, north of 30, between 30 and Green Oaks Boulevard.
You're right by an elementary school. I forget which school it was, but no matter. How you have an outdoor job. How are you trying to beat the heat?
Well, I've got an Nalgene here. I fill it up with ice water every morning when I leave the office, and I sometimes I run out and I'll have to break down and buy a Gatorade from the gas station as I make my way around town. The guys on the cruise, they're set up with 5-gallon buckets of ice water, and they also have the powdered Gatorade that they can mix in with that kind of thing. But this time of year, I mean, we're mandating starting early, and everybody's got to be back on the road back to the office by 2:30, 3 o'clock.
Wow. Yeah, because that's the heat of the day. 4 o'clock is usually
Yeah.
the peak time. All right, so the guys are taking care of themselves. Now let's get into trees and how is the drought affecting trees around town?
So yeah, it's we're starting to see some effects of the drought. I think I saw on the news the other day we're on day 25 of no measurable rainfall in DFW at I think that's at the airport. But yeah, it's going to hit your freshly planted trees, your younger trees first, because they're still trying to get established and they don't have as a deep or robust of a root system. So make sure those are getting plenty of water, not just from your sprinkler. Really, the ideal situation would be a soaker hose running for about 4 to 6 hours, about twice a week, just trying to mimic natural rainfall.
All right, and is there a specific tree that is affected most by drought? Oaks are pretty hardy, but maybe this tree is not. I don't know about crepe myrtles. What's what's the one or the group of trees that's most affected by the drought?
Sure. So the ones I've been seeing over the past couple weeks have been all your maples, Japanese maples, silver maples, red maples, um, and then also your elms, like mostly cedar elm, starting to get a little crispy at those leaf margins.
The one tree, when you mentioned Japanese maples, the one tree that I see around our neighborhood, the Japanese maples tend to be growing in the shade, and I would assume
Mhm.
that's beneficial.
Oh yes, yes. They're largely a shade-driven species to begin with, but sometimes you can get away if they're in some partial sun throughout the day, but maybe not this year.
What can a homeowner do to help manage their trees during the drought?
So yeah, in addition to the sprinkler system that you probably have for your lawn, so you got to understand that water percolation going for 15 minutes at a time, it's not really penetrating to the level that's going to reach those tree roots 6 to 8 inches below the surface of the soil. Most of that water is getting soaked right up by the grass immediately. And very, very little, if any, is getting down where it needs to go. Like I mentioned before, getting a soaker hose out there 4 to 6 hours at a time, barely even have to, have the faucet on. The goal is that you're not going to have runoff with the soaker hose, and that it's going to seep down and really saturate that ground where it needs to go. Um, in addition to that, make sure that you don't have bare soil. Adding mulch around the base of your tree to really prevent water loss through evaporation is key as well.
But not the mulch volcano.
No mulch volcanoes, but yeah, definitely a layer of about 3 to 4 inches of mulch would be very beneficial.
And let's recap that so in case listeners missed that particular episode. The difference between a mulch volcano and, say, I don't know, the mulch bowl.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. The mulch bowl. The idea behind that is we're still we have mulch here. We're providing organic matter that can start to break down and provide nutrients over a longer period of time. And having a little ridge around the outside ring of the tree will help direct that water to the main trunk of the tree. Where you get into a mulch volcano is where you have just mounds of mulch piled up against the trunk, where you're actually holding moisture against the trunk of the tree, which can lead to rot issues.
All right. So the mulch, you don't want you don't want the mulch piled up a quarter of the way
Right.
and actually I think if you had mentioned it's actually good to show a little bit of the roots,
Hmm.
the
Yep.
surface roots.
Yep. Yep. You should be able to see those first roots kind of descending down into the soil.
So, is there anything else you want to add before we wrap this up in terms of treating your trees for drought?
Sure. Yeah. If you have a tree that's starting to look a little bit crispy on the outer edges of the leaves, you're probably going to be dealing with that kind of stress load on that tree for years to come. So it's really important to get some borer sprays going on it just to protect it from any outside infestations when it's in this weakened state. Um, Drought reduces a plant's ability to produce food, restricts the ability to absorb nutrients, and limits growth. It's just going to be hard for plants to fully recover for drought, and it's probably going to take several years to do so.
If someone wanted to reach out and ask more questions of our friendly neighborhood arborist, Cameron Scott, how can they get a hold of you?
Sure, you can give my office a call at 817-656-8733 or send me an email at cscott@bartlett.com.
That's Cameron Scott. Let's let's do it again next week.
Sounds good.